Good morning and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I'm going to be your facilitator for today's session. Today we have with us one of our frequent presenters, Lucy Barylak. Good morning, Lucy. And she's
Good
going to be
morning.
talking about managing guilt and self-care. So before she gets started with her presentation, let me tell you just a little bit about Lucy. Lucy Barylak received her master's degree in social work from McGill University and has dedicated her career to supporting caregivers. Lucy was the founder and long-term manager of the Caregiver Support Center at a respite program for family caregivers. There, she oversaw multidisciplinary training across caregiving, mental health, elder abuse, and palliative care. She has been a key architect of screening and assessments tool of family caregivers, for which she provides training to healthcare professionals across North America. Lucy consults for private industry, including WellMed Charitable Foundation and clinics in Texas. Additionally, Lucy is a liaison supervisor at the School of Social Work at McGill University, where she currently supervises, and I had 20, but it could vary from that. And she wants you to know that she was a caregiver for her mother for several years. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Glenda, and good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. As Glenda said, usually we have questions during my presentation, but today it's going to be a little bit different. So if you want to get a paper, pencil, or your computer on the chat, just whatever questions you have, you'll have an opportunity later on. So today I'm really talking about managing guilt. Being a caregiver comes with a complex set of emotions that could change from moment to moment, including guilt. And guilt occurs frequently because caregivers' self-expectations are often unrealistic and usually cannot be successfully met. It's important for caregivers to recognize when they feel guilt, as it can impact their own health and the care that they are providing. Now, from my research for this whole topic, it was so interesting. And what they're saying is that guilt is a very powerful emotion that actually triggers a whole bunch of other emotions. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and keeping in mind that you can feel guilty, but at the same time, you feel so overwhelmed. And I'll tell you, how does that really happen? So let's go to the next slide. So what I'm going to do today is, obviously, I'm going to talk why guilt is such a tricky emotion, what can cause feeling of guilt, how to cope better. And this one is so important for all the emotions that we ever feel. The challenge of self-care. Next. Okay, so what is caregiver guilt? It's really negative feelings of a distressed experience when caring for a loved one. Caregiving guilt can include feelings of depression, burden, anxiety, being overwhelmed. Some people may feel as if they aren't doing enough for the person they are caring for, even if they're validated by others. Caregivers' guilt may come from multiple factors, and I'm going to look at that. So let's go to the next slide. Guilt is a common feeling associated with caregivers. And I want to tell you, Glenda said I was a caregiver for my mother for over 10 years. And let me tell you, that guilt would come on me when I least expected it. It was a difficult emotion to deal with. But however, guilt, like other feelings and emotions, like sadness and anger, is like any other pain. So what I want to say is emotional pain for some people is worse than a physical pain. It's so strong, but what it is, it's an alert to listen to. That means if you're having an emotion, you better stop and think about, what am I feeling here? By talking about it today, I hope to help you notice the feelings, address it, as well as to understand why you feel guilty. You may have an image of yourself as the ideal you. Okay, we all have that perception of who we are. Includes what it does include your values, your religion, and how you relate to others. Guilt often arises when there is a mismatch between your actual day-to-day reality and the vision you have of yourself as a caregiver and as a person. Sometimes it's just don't align together, but I do want to say guilt, like any other emotion, can inspire you to be better, or it can paralyze you. That's why this topic is so very important. Next. So let's look at what causes caregiver guilt. So you have a whole bunch of things that you can go over yourself and think about that and see, and does it reflect really how you're feeling? Perhaps the person you're taking care of is not improving. Many times, caregivers can blame themselves falsely, believing if they did something else, a loved one's medical condition would improve. When a loved one's health deteriorates, caregivers sometimes mistakenly believe that they should be doing more to enhance the quality of life of the one that they're caring for. So feeling of guilt, anger, and helplessness occur, it really occurs with this way of thinking. Okay, so when I say to you, when you have a feeling, think about it, identify it, because it does make sense that if you think about it for a moment, then you can kind of look at, what am I doing here? Is this all real? So and sometimes it could be your unresolved past relationships in caregiving. People can also acknowledge bringing their past relationships into their role as a caregiver. Past unresolved conflicts with family members can influence the caregiver's relationship. And many caregivers feel guilty about the ways that the past arguments or issues from childhood come up in the current relationship and roles. And, we talk about caregiving. I always say the person that you're loving, but not all relationships were good to begin with in the past. And all of a sudden you are now a caregiver to someone that maybe, you never wanted to forgive for how they treated you, or you felt that they never really loved you or cared about you. So these are all these horrible emotions that if we have not dealt with what we've gone through in the past, in our childhood, they seem to come up a lot when you all of a sudden find yourself as a caregiver, even for a person that you were very close to, but things that you never got resolved, because there's a lot of secrets in families, right? Including my own. So I just wanted to say that I had to resolve with my mother. Now, resentment for personal time lost. Sometimes caregivers, they're resentful. Like you may begin to experience resentment when when the only thing that you're doing is you're preoccupied with the person that you're caring for. You may desire to spend time with other people or other tasks, and caregiving takes up your physical and emotional space. And all of a sudden you're kind of feeling, am I being selfish? Like, really, should I be thinking about him? Why am I so upset about all the time that I'm spending? So all of a sudden, that little guilt feeling creeps in. Let's take a look at the next slide. Again, feeling bad about how you treated the person before they were diagnosed. Let's look at that a little bit. Before people get diagnosed, their personality may change and their behavior may change. And you haven't gotten a diagnosis yet. You don't even know what's going on. And you could be angry at that person. It could be like, what's going on here? Why are they behaving like this? Why are they being so difficult? But I want you to keep in mind, so that's when the guilt, like now that you know, all of a sudden you're feeling guilty. Why did I behave that way to my mother? Why was I so angry at her? But I want you to tell you that you did the best that you could with the information that you had, at the time. So bear in mind that everyone gets frustrated with their partner or family members from time to time. So whatever you were feeling, and if you do feel guilty about that, I want you to forgive yourself now. Next, please. Now, caregivers tell me that they feel so guilty about getting angry or irritated. If you feel angry and frustrated, you might occasionally direct this towards the person you are caring for. Many caregivers find it hard to forgive themselves in this situation, especially if they have said something hurtful to the person. And believe it or not, some people even can become physically more aggressive towards that person. One caregiver would tell me, I feel so guilty, horrible, I'm a monster because I shake him. I get so frustrated. So we know that this behavior is unacceptable. Okay, this is not something that you should be doing. But once you recognize it and you feel guilty about it, you know that it's wrong. And it's so important to get the help that you do need. But just for the moment, just to kind of give you a bit of a tip, excuse me, try to remember that caring can be very stressful, and anger or frustration are natural for everyone in this situation. However, at times when you do find yourself becoming angry or frustrated, it can help to leave the room for a little while, allow things to settle down. However, if you feel that you cannot control that behavior, it is time for you to get help. And I'm going to talk about that. How do you go about getting that help? Next. Now, there is resentment in caregiving, okay? No matter who you're caring for, you know, when guilt turns into resentment, remember I told you in the beginning that guilt really triggers other emotions, and one of them is resentment. There are a number of emotional and behavioral issues that caregivers can experience, especially if with the stress that comes up um, and is not addressed, okay? Guilt can result in reactive cycles. That's what I meant, the triggers that creates other emotions and symptoms that can reoccur over and over again. So the whole idea behind this is that caregiver resentment, people especially feel very guilty about, how can I be resentful? They're the person that's sick. But I want to look at some of these common signs of resentments. There is ambivalence, the feeling of wanting to be doing what you're doing, but also not wanting to do it at the same time. So resentments, feeling unappreciated for the care you are giving or wanting more help and not getting it. You can be irritable if you do not feel gratitude for what you are doing. When you are repeatedly criticized, it might result in being irritable. For example, if you're the main caregiver and your sister or brother tells you that, you should be doing this with mom and dad, and that irritability and resentments comes to the surface. And the other thing is forced into that role. Not everybody accepts that role readily. Many times caregivers feel that just because they're the ones living closer to that individual, I was an only child. I was not resentful, I have to say that. But sometimes you're an only child and you have no other choice. And the other thing is no time for yourself, other things or other people to be part of. Why am I emphasizing that? Because guilt has a lot to do with wanting things for yourself. So it always pops up. And this is why it's so important to understand why you're feeling guilty and to see what you can do about it. Next. Now, in my caregiving journey and in my professional career, caregivers, I don't know why, including myself many times, felt, am I doing the best that I can? And it's so important to think about that, feeling that other people are doing a better job. Meeting up with other caregivers, maybe at a support group, or reading about the people's experience might make you think that others are coping better than you are. You may feel guilty you haven't lived up to your own expectation or those of the person with the illness, or to the expectations you believe other people have of you. But remember, there's no such thing as a perfect caregiver. And it's important not to be too hard on yourself. Comparing yourself to other caregivers can be devastating to your mental health and sense of self. You can never truly know what's going on in someone else's household. A caregiver may appear to be perfect on the outside, but they have their own struggles. Comparing your entire self to someone else only leads to guilt and shame. So whatever it is, maybe you're meeting other caregivers and they say, oh no, everything's fine. I'm doing a great job. Go back to your own life. Go back to where you're at. You have to focus on your own life, your own family, and your own responsibility. If you find a comparison to be a good motivating self, then look at all the good things that you're doing, okay? And just keep that in mind. Next. Feeling ashamed about accepting help from others. Now, how many of you honestly feel, that you should be doing it all yourself and having a really hard time accepting help from either family or friends or even private help? Many caregivers feel they should be able to manage without any help. But looking after a person can be exhausting physically and emotionally. You may be able to free up some valuable time by accepting respite. We talk about respite. It's so important. Even to get a little bit of help at home, day centers. These are all important things to keep in mind. This will give you more energy and you may be able to go on caring longer if this is what you choose to do. Now, even if the person you're caring for is initially upset about others becoming involved, they may well come to terms with the idea later on. The first experience of separation often makes carers feel guilty and unable to relax, but in time, you will probably get used to it and will start to experience the benefit. I always felt that nobody can care for my mother the way I do. I wonder if some of you feel that way too. Um, Others may do the task a little bit different, but in the long term, if it does no harm, does it really matter? I would come in sometimes and see my mother dressed the way I didn't want her to be dressed, but she seemed to be happy. So you have to really think about that because it's important that I know that at one point in my caregiving journey, I wasn't able to continue caring for her alone. Next. Does anybody feel guilty about wanting time away from that person? You may feel guilty about having time to yourself, but everyone needs to recharge their batteries now and again. It's very important for caregivers to enjoy some time away from their caring role. Many caregivers find that giving themselves some time apart and doing things that make them feel happy and positive makes them more able to fulfill their role. If the person you're caring for can't be left alone, because that could always be something that's a real reason, it's okay to ask a friend or a family member if they can come in a little bit and give you some time alone. And what I want to say, don't feel guilty about it. I'm giving you full permission to do things for yourself. Next. I'm only going to talk about this for just a few minutes, just in case anybody in the audience is facing this, because this is a session all of its own, okay? So let's go review it a little bit. This is a big one. Knowing placement in a care facility or nursing home. If you think that that's what it's going to end up to, it's really important to think about it. You may experience caregiver guilt and faced with the decision of putting the person you care for in a facility. You may wonder about your capacity to care for your loved one on your own, but need professional help around medications and other medical things that need to be done. And to return, or you need to go to work, or you have a family, whatever the reason may be. Or the care is too heavy. Sometimes the care at home, it's too heavy for you to do. And in a way, you're kind of putting the person that you're caring for at risk. Some caregivers may feel that moving the person into a home is a betrayal. okay? You might think you've let the person down, or that you should have coped better longer, should have done things better. You may have previously promised the person you would always look after them at home, and now feel forced to break that promise. And I want to share with you that really happened to me. And it is a very difficult thing to do. Remember that any promises were probably made in a completely different situation. The move to a care home also doesn't need to mean that you give up your caregiving role completely. It's just a different way of caring. So I really wanted to kind of say that. And I will develop a separate session just on this particular topic. Next. Okay, you may have needs out of line with this ideal person. Okay, I'm going back to that for a little bit. We all have a sense of who we are, we have our values. We feel very strongly about things. And so we want to experience that. We want to that's part of our caregiving role. You may believe that your own needs are insignificant compared to the needs of the person you're caring for. You then feel guilty when you even recognize your needs, much less act upon them. You may have, unbalanced feelings with the ideal you, feeling angry about the injustice of your loved one's illness. You might even feel angry at them for getting sick, and you're wondering, how can I be angry at them for being sick? But you are, and you need to recognize those feelings can produce a healthy dose of guilt. I have to tell you, if you don't deal with it, that's what's going to happen. It's going to just come up. Why did my loved one get sick? All these questions you may ask. Perhaps if the ideal you acted faster, your loved one would be healthy. I mean, all that thing of you're kind of saying to yourself, what's wrong with me? Why did I not do the right thing? What if you served more, maybe if the diet was better? What if you called 911 instead of believing your husband when he said his chest pain was just a little heartburn? If you're the kind of person prone to guilt, learn to manage guilt so that the guilt serves you rather than imprisons you. So just take a step back right now and say to yourself, am I that kind of a person? Am I always feeling guilty that I didn't do the right thing? If you are that person, it's so important to recognize that. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you hints of how to deal with that. Next. This is a big one. It's a funny one, but it's a serious one, Stop and listen and ask yourself, does this make sense? Do you feel guilty about feeling guilty? And the reason that I'm saying that is because it's just so interesting. People have a hard time many times, to be honest, to themselves, but not only that, but to express those feelings to others. We're so concerned about being judged, okay? So if one of you feels guilty about feeling guilty, you have a right to feel that way, and it's okay to talk about it. So let's look at how can we cope with guilt. Next. So here we go. The first thing that I tell people about any feeling, everybody's entitled to feel anything, and you have to acknowledge that you're feeling that. So identify when guilt occurs. I believe that guilt occurs when you feel that you did something wrong. It lingers and festers, and you start questioning yourself. Why did I say that? Why did I do that? This isn't like me. I feel terrible. How can I make it right? Is it too late? Am I a terrible person? And remember, I told you one caregiver, I'm telling you, felt that she was a big monster, but she wasn't. She just was able, once she was able to actually talk about these guilt feelings, she recognized that it's normal many times. It's okay. Now, what you should be doing is reevaluate your self-expectations. Are you too hard on yourself? Are you doing too much? This is a good exercise to do. Don't stifle your feelings. acknowledge them, and admit you feel guilty. That's really the first step for yourself to get help and for yourself to deal with it. Another big one, connect with others. Don't isolate yourself. Um, confide in people that you trust. What I mean by that, there's a lot of people that are around you, only that you trust them and feel that they will be non-judgmental. Talk to them. Make time for yourself every single day. It should be part of your daily routine. It's a given. Go to a group, a support group. As you're doing right now, this is kind of a support group. Be kind to yourself and accept that you're human and humans make mistakes. Focus on the quality time and find joy in the small moments. Finding meaning and purpose in your time with your loved one can help you avoid caregiving guilt. When you're a full-time caregiver, it's easy to get lost in the routine and go through the motions. However, you have an incredible opportunity to spend quality time with that person. For example, reminiscing, laughing, or simply enjoying each other's company can be powerful experience. By enjoying these little moments, you remind yourself that you are doing the best that you can for them, and you bring joy into their life as well. Take joy in the small moments when you both smile and share some memories together. And Glenda knows, I've said it many times, my most memorable moments with my mother was when I was doing her nails. And we just kind of connected. And that brought me joy because I know that I brought her joy. And so remember, look at those. Those are important things. Now, I would go as far as remind yourself of all those positive things you've done. Keep a journal of all those little times and review them from time to time when you're feeling guilty. Go back to it and say, oh my gosh, we had a great time the other day. We were just looking at pictures and they felt so connected and, we were in the moment. Next. Coping. I'm going to be repeating myself a little bit because it's kind of has to really filter in our minds. And the same as even though I was the professional for caregivers, a lot of these feelings I felt, and I really had to stop and recognize my feeling of guilt, because unrecognized guilt eats at you. Name it. Identify other feelings. Often there are feelings under the feelings of guilt. Remember, I told you that. Name those two. For example, say to yourself, I hate to admit this to myself, but I'm resentful that this illness changed all of our lives, especially mine. Once you put it into words, you will have a new perspective. You will also be reminding yourself of how fortunate you are to have what it takes to take care of that person. Be compassionate with yourself. We all have cloudy days, cloudy moods, like cloudy days come and go. There's no one way a caregiver should feel. When you give yourself permission to have any feeling and recognize that your feelings don't control your actions, your guilt will subside. Take time to feel sorry for yourself. And if you've listened to me before, I give myself about a day to wallow in my sorrow and feel sorry for myself. And it does me good. But the important thing, it has to be time limited, okay? And if you're feeling that you're feeling these feelings constantly every single day, you need to get some help because it can turn into depression. Look for the cause of the guilt. What is the mismatch between the ideal you and the real you? Do you have an unmet need? Do you need to change your actions so that they align with your values? Okay, that's an important thing to think about. You don't have to be this perfect person, even though you could be extremely moral and you're a wonderful listener. You can't be that all the time. And it's very, very important to recognize. Change your behavior. That's part of it to fit your values. For example, sometimes we don't do what we stand for. Change your behavior for the better when you can. There's always a next time. Revisit and reinvent the ideal you. You made the best decision based on your resources and knowledge at the time. As you look into the future, you can create a refined vision of the ideal you. What legacy do you want to leave? What values do you hold dear? Then when you wake up in the morning and put on your clothes, imagine dressing the ideal you. Let this reinvented ideal you make those moments to moment choices that create your legacy, and be flexible by moving on. Again, ask for help. Call a friend and say, I'm going through a hard time. Do you have a few minutes just to listen? Have a family meeting and say, our lives have been a lot of changes since this diagnosis. I'm spending more time with our parents. I'm really having a hard time. Let's figure out together how we'll get everything done. Many times families have different views about how caregiving should be handled. It's important to have family gatherings. Understand that you will be a more effective caregiver when you care for the caregiver first, okay? The person you are caring for, I'm sure, neither wants or expects, sometimes they do, for you to be selfish and as a servant. You have to put limits to that. As a caregiver, when you care for yourself, you increase and improve your own caring. Yes, guilt is part of caregiving, but this guilt can also help you become the caregiver you and the person are caring for want to be. It reminds you that you can do better in the future. Experiencing guilt shows that you have moral and ethical standards as well as empathy. That's important to keep in mind. When you're feeling guilty about something, it's because you are ethical and you do have empathy, you know? But at the same time, there needs to be a balance. You need to really understand that. Next. So as we go along, as I'm saying all this, it's important to adjust your expectations. It really, really is. As I had to do when I was caring my mother, I was working full time. I had a young family at home. I was married. I had relationships. I had to adjust my expectations. Explore the idea, you and your perfect vision. You go back to yourself, you don't have to be perfect. It should be a work in progress. Avoid putting such intense expectations on yourself. You'll only feel guilty when you don't fulfill them. Do one thing at a time. For example, you get up, it's bath time, right? But you're tired today, just don't feel like it. Is it okay to just have a sponge bath? It's okay. Or maybe even not. The person hasn't gone anywhere. They're okay if you bathe them tomorrow. Everyone needs a break to rest and recharge. Identify what you need. Do not blame yourself for their decline. It's out of your control. It's the disease that has the power, not you. Caregiving guilt often results from unrealistic expectations to yourself. You want to be that perfect caregiver for your loved one and provide them with the highest quality of life. Caregivers are not miracle workers. If you put such intense expectations on yourself, you'll only feel guilty when you cannot fulfill them. Don't expect yourself to provide, and this is a big one, 24/7 care, okay? That's unheard of. You can't do it. The person, without support. Everyone needs a break to rest, recharge. Also, try not to blame yourself for your loved ones, as I said, declining health, especially if you have a person with a progressive disease, especially any form of dementia. You want to keep your loved one as healthy as possible, but that isn't always within your power, and try not to blame yourself. Next. I know that I'm saying a lot, and I hope that you're kind of keeping track on that. We'll go back to, I'm keeping my times because I want to make sure we have lots of time for questions. Now, self-care. This is so important regardless of whether you're a caregiver or not, but especially if you are a caregiver. So what does self-care look like? Next, please. Self-care is the practice of individuals looking after their mental and physical health, using the knowledge and information available to them. Here are the key words. It's a decision-making process that empowers individuals to look after their own well-being. You need to take ownership and accept that you are the only one that can give you that gift. And it is a gift, okay? Self-care is an act of self-love. Now, women in particular bear incredible guilt to care for themselves because we have been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves first is somehow wrong or indulgent. That's a very interesting thought. We should all think about that. Now, I wonder about the new generation. I know that in my generation, this is how we felt. Understanding that you will be a more effective caregiver when you care for yourself first. For example, when you go on a plane, you have to put your oxygen on first, right? Before you can help the person next to you. So that's kind of should give you a really good guideline of what this is all about. The person that you're caring for most of the time does not expect you again to do everything. When you care for yourself, you feel rested and more relaxed. You can improve your caregiving duties, especially minimizing the risk of potential abuse to them and to yourself. Yes, guilt is part of caregiving, but this guilt can help you become the caregiver you and the person you're caring for want to be, because once you recognize that you feel guilty, you have a better understanding to the reasons why and be able to adjust accordingly to meet your particular needs. So let's look at, and this is nothing new that I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to emphasize it again because it's so important to keep in mind. Next. Physical and mental health is priority one. Now, I know some of you are going to say, we know all about this, but are you actually practicing eating well, healthy food, minimizing sugar, processed food, focusing on fresh fruits, vegetable, drinking a lot of water? We all think we know it, but are we doing it? And I have to push myself, especially drinking water. I don't like to drink water. Have to find other ways. Sleep. I want to tell you, not getting a good night's sleep can affect you physically as well as cognitively, believe it or not. Not being able to concentrate and feeling tired is one thing, but feeling more confused if you don't sleep. Moving, so important. Moving is having, you have to have an exercise routine. That's the ideal. If that's too difficult for you to do, walking is an amazing exercise. I try to park my car, believe it or not, further away from where I have to go just to give me those extra few steps. Spiritual practice. That's important. It can be praying, meditation, chanting, breathing exercises, but it can also be your daily interactions with other people as well as staying in the moment, enjoying nature, and being aware of what surrounds you. Sometimes we just kind of forget. When I drive, it's one way of looking at things, but sometimes when I walk the same streets and say, my God, I never even noticed that. Wow. It's important to do that. And the other thing that's extremely important is see your physician. Make an appointment with your doctor if you haven't done it, because some of the feelings that you are experiencing may be due to some medications that you are taking and that are affecting your mood, or a physical condition that you're not aware of that makes you feel so tired now, or depressed. The thing is, even over-the-counter medication, I'm a big one for that one. You have a cold, you're not sleeping, you went and got over-the-counter medication. You better believe there's a lot of side effects. Don't buy anything over the counter without speaking to the pharmacist first. And I better get going because it seems that we're moving on the time. So all these things are important, taking small breaks, active relaxation, treat yourself, go for coffee with a friend, bubble bath, whatever it is. Time apart is important. We all need our space. I in particular need it a lot more than most people. Respite. The other important thing, setting your own boundaries. Acknowledge what you can and cannot do, and have the ability to say no. Okay, that is so important, to say no to the person you are caring for and to others and to yourself. Okay, so here are all these things that you can look at a little bit, because you're all going to get these slides once you're registered. So let's go to the next slide. When to get professional help. Okay, this is really, really important. You know, those powerful emotions of guilt, anxiety, depression, resentment, all that, they're all crucial. You really have to be honest with yourself. It's crucial for a caregiver's emotional, physical well-being to have a person you can speak to honestly, to vent their feelings and not feel judged for having them. Need to understand and process your emotions, gain insight and problem solving, especially if you haven't done it. And there are a lot of baggage that you carry from your childhood. Very important. Next. So, you know, when do you get help? When you're actually, from all the tips that I'm giving you today, and none of them seem to work, and if you're trying it, you're really trying to do it on your own, you know when it's time to get the help that you need. And what I want to tell you is, it's important to tell yourself, I'm in a difficult situation and I have to make difficult decisions sometimes. I accept that I'm human and get impatient sometimes. I'm doing the best that I can, even though things go wrong from time to time. And I accept that I'm not perfect. And I forgive myself because I'm trying to understand who I am and what are my needs at this time. Remember, there's a balance here. There's two people in this relationship. One does not outweigh the other. Their needs are not as important as yours. And with that, there are some resources. We'll look at them a little bit later. Let's have a caring conversation.
All right. If you have a question, comment, want to talk about your particular situation, Lucy would love to hear from you. You can unmute your microphone if you zoomed in, or if you called in, you can press *6, and that will unmute your telephone, and I will call on you by your area code because I cannot see your name. Others of you, I can see your names. So please.
So I'm going to throw something out. If somebody, you know, I know you're, oh, we got something. Let's go.
Where can I find respite in-home care options? Good question, Lucy.
I think, Glenda, you're probably better at it than I am because you've been in the healthcare system in the United States. I
Right.
hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
No, you're not putting me on the spot at all. I would say the first place to contact is the Area Agency on Aging, and there are area agencies on aging throughout the United States. I would encourage you to call 211 because that's also a national service here in the United States. And you can ask them for your local area agency on aging. Now, they are charged with taking care of and providing services for caregivers. So many of them do provide respite care for a limited amount of time. It varies from agency to agency, but it's worth the call. Plus, they may have other services that'll help you out. They have caregiver support specialists in those area agencies on aging. So you can talk to them more just about respite, and they should be able to help you. Other than that, there are many home health agencies. If you're a private pay for some reason, something like that, you can always check with home health agencies. They provide respite. Many nursing homes provide respite care. So there's many options for you out there, but I would start with the Area Agency on Aging for sure. So thank you for that question. It was a good one. JC asks, going on vacation soon for 10 days, but I know my mom with dementia will be upset because I am her person. Any suggestions? By the way, she is living in a memory care assisted living.
Well, what I want to say is I am thrilled that you are going on vacation. And I give you total permission if that adds any value to you. That's one of the biggest ones. That's where guilt comes in all the time. It's not even going on a vacation, it's going for coffee with someone or, leaving the person. You have to acknowledge that if you're feeling guilty, it's because you are compassionate and you care about your mom. But she's going to be okay. I guarantee you, especially if she's in a placement setting. And I don't know what the condition of her dementia is. If it's progressive, time means nothing. There's no time frame. They don't kind of know, oh, she's been gone 2 days. But even if they are aware that you've gone 2 days, it's okay. It's okay to explain. I think it's important to let them know that you love them, that you're going. And I wish you the best vacation ever, because what it's going to do is going to rejuvenate you. And you're going to come back looking very much forward to seeing your mom.
She says, should I tell her beforehand that she's going on
Well, I think
vacation?
I think it's an individual basis. I think if you think that she would be aware that you're not there, yes, I think that's important to tell her. But if you think that it's going to make her upset even more and she might not be aware, that's a judgment call. I cannot say. It's up to the relationship and it's up to how you feel she would react.
Yeah,
But you might tell her and she might forget 5 minutes later.
yeah. Depends on
Whatever
the
makes you
time.
feel better about it. If you feel
Exactly.
that you want to be honest with her, go ahead and do it. Remember, with this presentation, it's always about your feelings. Okay? It's about your feelings. If you're feeling guilty, what would make you feel better? Telling her or not telling her?
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. Laura says, one of my caregivers said that her grown children offered to help, but she hasn't accepted because they have their own families and lives. Boy, can I relate to this. She is very stressed out. What is a good response to someone who says that?
Oh, so this is you're talking about you have a caregiver client, is that it? Because I didn't quite
Yeah,
understand.
I'm not sure I understand that either, Lucy. Laura, could you unmute your mic and
Oh,
maybe
she said, okay, so your
uh,
client, okay, could you repeat that again for me, Glenda? So it's a client,
one of
okay.
my caregivers said that her grown children offered to help, but she hasn't accepted because they have their own families and lives. She's very stressed out. And what would
Okay.
you say to her? Okay.
Okay, well, remember when I said that at one point, you got to look at your own needs, okay? Now, so what this person is doing, they're projecting that the other family members have a lot. Is it because that person feels that nobody can take care of the parent as well as, or the person as well as she can? This question is really, it's a wonderful way for you to explore with your client. Why does she feel that way? What is behind those feelings? Is it because she feels no one can take care of them the way she does? Is it because the relationship with the siblings have not been a good one, and so she's protecting? Is she overprotective? This is a really good question to have a very good counseling session.
I think you're right about that, Lucy. Um, and this next one from Rose is the $1 million question. How do you deal with caregiving to a person who you've not had a good relationship with? $1 million question, right?
No, extremely, extremely difficult. So I want to tell you that if you're doing that, my hat is off to you. That means you're a person with a lot of compassion, and the circumstances are very, very different. I think what you need to really do um, is, I don't know what condition the person that you're caring for is, if they're competent mentally or not. That would be helpful for me to know. But I think at the end of the day, if you decided to care for this person, obviously there must be reasons behind it. And you need to look at that. Why am I caring for this person? Is it a financial situation? Is it because nobody else wants to step up? Is it because I want to build on that relationship? I want to, so it's very difficult for me to kind of give you that exactly a way to deal with it. But you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this first and foremost? And once you understand that, it's really important. I don't know what the relationship was like before. It could have been, if the person was hurtful to you, it would be very difficult. But I have to say that you have to be very honest with yourself, because if you hold grudges against a person and they're in a vulnerable situation, you could act out, and that would make you feel very, very bad. So I think I really would advise you to go and deal with that. Speak to someone, to a professional. As Glenda said, there are services available through the AAAs where you can talk to someone and really explore why. I don't know if this is helpful, but I certainly understand how difficult it is.
Yeah. And I agree with you, Lucy. It's so individualized. You have to kind of know the history before you can deal
Yes.
with the present, right? Phyllis, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. How are you all this afternoon?
Great,
Thank
thank you.
Good. I have been listening to you all speak and elaborate on everything, and it has really helped me because I've gone through everything that you're talking about. My mother has dementia. It's not so bad right now. She has some pretty good days, and every once in a while they get kind of off beat a little bit. But I'm her, number one caregiver. I have a sister and a brother, but there's always that one that they depend on, and I am that one. I don't mind because they have been very good parents to us. But it can get emotional because I hate to see my mother go through that. So it makes me feel, I get emotional about it, and I have to just go to another room and cry and pray or whatever and just come back because I don't want her to see me, you know, feeling like I'm feeling. But this has really helped me today.
I'm so glad. Thank you so much for sharing. I have to say, I can really relate to what you're saying. The hardest thing
Yes.
for me was seeing my mother's decline, a very strong, independent woman. And
Yeah.
what you're doing is the right thing. I would go and cry too.
Yeah.
But what sort of, I think what kept me, and what I'm hearing from you is the joy that you have in being able to take care for her, and
Yeah.
to be there for her. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that this has helped you. This was the whole purpose behind, I think, all of us talking openly and sharing is really acknowledging how we're feeling. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Phyllis. Come back and visit with us again, please.
I
Absolutely.
will.
Glenda, we have 5 minutes. It's really up to you if we should take one more question, because I always know you have, there's someone really
Well,
putting up their hand.
Michelle, I see you with your hand. Let me finish up one thing, Michelle, then I'm going to come back to you. Rose clarified, she was asking about caregiving for somebody you didn't have a good relationship with. She clarified that it's her husband, and he's been diagnosed with
Oh,
Alzheimer's and Lewy body. So,
that's a toughie. That's a real that's one of the hardest ones, I think. When you're in a relationship with another person, regardless if it's a marriage partner, whatever it is, and that has not been a good relationship, it's one of the hardest things to do. And that's why I would even emphasize even more to get the counseling that you need for yourself, to be able to set limits and to be able to find joy. If you feel like you want to continue caring, or maybe you don't even have a choice, but you do have a choice about what you need. So please, please go and get the help that you need. I wish I could have spent a little bit more time with you. Unfortunately, I think you need a little bit more help.
I support everything you said, Lucy.
And this is
Okay,
Michelle. Is it Michelle?
yeah, Michelle, please
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Michelle.
From Madison, Wisconsin. It is my husband who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's last October, and it was a rapid advancement. So in January, he was hospitalized after being hospitalized many times. Anyway, he's in a memory care facility, And our daughter got married this last Saturday out in Colorado. Talk about a difficult, sad situation. But he stayed here, and I, got a schedule of what friends were going to come and visit him. And I posted it up in his room so he knew who was coming. And I did too. And I would send them pictures to show my husband each day. So that worked out very nicely. But I'm so glad I found you. I have had past experience in Al-Anon with a daughter, daughter who got married was alcoholic and had an eating disorder. And I never had the expectation of her getting married, but she's recovered, living a wonderful life. So those tools have been applied again.
Thank you so much. Just hearing you talk, and women, I'm just going to generalize, women are so resilient. I find, I'm not saying that men aren't, please, if there are men in the audience, but it just seems that we go through so much, people go through so much in life, and yet to be able to find that joy and the acceptance is key word of what's going on in our lives. So thank you so much, Michelle, and I'm so happy. Congratulations on the wedding, and congratulations on the fact that your daughter is really in a good place.
And you could hear the joy in her voice, couldn't you, Lucy?
Absolutely, I hear the joy. I want to thank everybody. I'm
Absolutely.
so happy that you joined us today. I'm going to give it over to you, Glenda.
Okay.
There is one more slide. There is wonderful. If you look at the
yeah.
last slide, there are, and I think if you get the slide and you go on it, these are great articles, by the way. It's not all the research that I did, because I did like really theory research, but these are good articles to take a look at. Okay.
And as I said, Lucy is going to share this with you if you registered for the session today. And we'd had that question very early on, so that is the answer to that. We are going to do a survey right now. If you'll just take a couple of minutes to go on your screen and just fill that out, it lets us know how we're doing. If there's areas that we need to improve on, we certainly want to hear about that. We're open to that. So if you'll just take the couple of minutes while I'll tell you what's coming up on the Caregiver Teleconnection next, just fill that out for us, if you would, please. Next Thursday, I'll be back with you with Erin Veit. And this is kind of the next step, Lucy. We're going to be talking about caregiver stress and what it is and what you can do about it. Then on Monday, September the 30th, at the end of the month, can you believe that September, it just seems like it started and we're rushing into the end of it again. It's going to be a Spanish language session at 10 o'clock. Oh, and did I say that the caregiver stress is at 1 o'clock Central Time? And then the Spanish language session about the basics of Medicare will be at 10 o'clock Central Time. So if you have questions about Medicare for the person you're caring for or for yourself, or you know someone that is primarily Spanish speaking, please refer them to that session. It will be a good one. Well, I do show that it's 11 o'clock. I want to express that I am so pleased that you all joined us today. It was a wonderful session, Lucy. Thank you so much. And do you have any final words for our participants today?
Well, I want you to do something special for yourself today. Okay, promise. Please take care of yourself. Very important. It was a pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please join us again, and look for those podcasts either on the Caregiver Teleconnection website or on YouTube. You can tell other family caregivers about it, other members of your family that are helping you in your caregiving journey. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.